recent radio interviews, has McConnell been asked about what happens next with PPP?
Like when the money runs out?
Yeah.
I don't remember that specifically, that question specifically being asked.
I think I'll ask it.
I think that's a good question. I think you're closer than I am, so I think you should ask it.
Oh, and I'll swap out with you immediately after I do that, because that's the kind of collegial person I am. It's Mike, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Paul Kane.
Okay, I've known him a long time.
How we doing, guys?
how you doing? Good, hey, I just got a few minutes. What can I do for you? What's that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Uh-huh.
Sure.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. 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 So what, yeah, so what are our steps here for, okay. Yeah, I've never, no, I have not either.
A new look, isn't it?
Thank you.
Family prefers this look.
Taking you through with that statement.
No, this is why.
Feel free to speak.
Hang in there.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, just your pen. Oh, no, you
That's
That's a great pen now.
It was Blue State Truck, the only ones who are screwed, right?
Everyone's getting it.
Getting screwed, okay.
It's Purell
Think it's too candid.
I do. I think that's why it was abandoned.
You have step two, right? This one.
Where'd you get your custom made mask?
Somebody made it for me, I didn't, a lady, the guy that worked for me, his mother made it, and I said, I'll do it.
Open that hallway up a little bit, please.
You're gonna think joining the pool, maybe that's not the best fit for the
Yeah.
Option, yes, this.
We'll live and learn, right? We're trapped. Now we can be at lunch every day, so. We can have, y'all doing?
Good.
Good.
Two minutes, guys.
No, yeah, that's right, both. Absolutely. Both correct, exactly. So, all right, where are the spots?
Great.
I don't see spots. I don't see spots either. Just measure 6.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. As we all know, we've been gone for 6 weeks. Necessarily gone, I might add, but much is stacked up. Since the Senate is in the personnel business and the House is not, we're working diligently this week on getting nominations out of committee that are important for the country that have been languishing for 6 weeks. Oversight is beginning already. Senator Alexander is going to have Dr. Fauci and others before his committee next week related to the coronavirus epidemic that we're all working our way through. We'll continue to discuss with the administration the way forward. I know many people are asking for additional legislation. I think I can speak for our conference by saying we're not ruling that out, but we think we ought to take a pause here, do a good job of evaluating what we've already done. It was encouraging yesterday that the Secretary of the Treasury issued a guidance that provides some flexibility on the state and local front, where we've already allocated $150 billion. So with that, let me yield to Senator Thin.
Well, thank you, Leader. I think the Leader covered well what the Senate is doing, and obviously we have, through the past several iterations of relief, done a lot of coronavirus legislation. much of which now is being implemented, and I think part of our job is to make sure that it gets implemented in the right way. And so as we have, a lot of our committees will be conducting oversight hearings and looking at various aspects of not only the health care aspect of it, but also the economic aspect of it. And I think that's critical work for the Senate to be involved with. And as the leader mentioned, the important role that the Senate has constitutionally of advise and consent when it comes to executive branch nominees, and there are some critical ones in national security roles that we need to be dealing with and confirming here. So those are things that are going to occupy a good amount of the Senate's time as we head forward. I think it is important, based on what's already been done and the fact that we've already flooded the zone, so to speak, with about $2.7 trillion in assistance, that we look at what's working, what's not working, and get a good evaluation, assessment, push the pause button. There is going to be a lot of interest among Democrats in particular about new spending programs, much of which they've already delineated. I think it's important for us to take a pause, look at what's working, what's not working, make sure that we're getting a good return, maximum a return on the taxpayer investment, and that the programs that we've already authorized and funded are being effective and having the desired effect. So those are things that we're going to be working on in the days and weeks ahead. I would also say that one of the issues that is sort of personal for many of us in the Midwest is the issue of the security of the food supply chain. We've had a number of packing plants across the country and that have closed up. I think it's critical that we work in a way that provides safety for workers, but hopefully in a way that allows these critical chains or critical links in our food supply chain to get opened up and working again. So I'm going to be supporting our producers, our farmers and ranchers in South Dakota, and try and strike that balance that is so important to ensuring that people, when they go to shop in the grocery stores and supermarkets across the country, that those critical food supplies are there. With that, I'll yield to Senator Brasso.
Well, the Senate is here working. The House has decided to stay at home. We think there is important work to be done on behalf of the American people. There are 30 million Americans who are out of work right now, and the Senate has an obligation and responsibility to be here. When you listen to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, you see they're almost trying to exploit the situation. You look at their list of liberal demands, it almost reads like a ransom note. They've already held hostage small businesses, mom and pop small businesses around America by blocking the Paycheck Protection Plan, the refunding of that, for over a week. What Republicans want to do is get moms and dads back to work. We want to get mom and pop small businesses to be able to stay viable so they can open again as states across the country are beginning to reopen. To me, any additional funding needs to be targeted. It needs to be temporary and focusing on the men and women of this country and getting them back to work. There is no place at all, in my opinion, for a blank check or a bailout for the things that the Democrats are talking about.
I think in both the fight for the economy and the fight against the virus, time really matters. And so what we've tried to do in both the CARES Act and the follow-up on the CARES Act is to create a lot of incentives to speed up everything we can speed up, whether it's the Shark Tank, an idea that we put in our bill with Senator Alexander, Senator Shelby very involved in that, along with me coming up with this idea that people would bring concepts to as far along as they could get them on diagnostics and other things. And then the Shark Tank will try to figure out the handful or whatever the number is that are more likely to work than not. And we'd fast forward as much as we could the opportunity to get into production. The White House, with their warp speed on vaccine, bringing the same concept. And I said at the lunch today to our members that with this concept, if some of the things we advance into production underwritten by the federal government don't fail, we're not trying hard enough. That the whole idea here is to try to buy time, to move forward a couple of steps beyond you would normally be, and because you would do that, you'd have a vaccine, you'd have an easy to take and quick responded to test 30 or 60 days sooner than you would have if you did this the traditional way. If we do that on all these fronts, on testing, on therapeutics, on vaccine, hopefully in all three cases, we'll get where we want to get quicker than we would otherwise get there. And believe me, whatever we invest in that will be worth it if we're successful in buying that time in the fight, again, against the virus and for the economy.
99% of Iowa's businesses are small businesses. And as a member of the Small Business Committee, the Paycheck Protection Program was very, very important to me. So worked quite heavily on that program, and we've seen great success in Iowa. So the first round of funding that was available, we saw over 30,000 loans for small businesses in Iowa approved at about, I think it was $7.8 billion, $7.3 billion, excuse me. And then the second round of funding, which was delayed by the Democrats for almost a week, we have seen Iowans take advantage of that program to the tune of about another 20,000 loans. And so we have seen great success with that program. We're very, very glad to have it in place. And I've heard from a number of those small businesses that are still out there supporting their employees because of the program. One of those is Grace United Methodist Church in Glenwood, Iowa. And because of that program, they have been able to keep their employees paid. They've paid their mortgage interest with that loan. And I've also heard from other organizations like Iowa Behavioral Health Association. They have been able to keep their staff members on board, keep their doors open, and make sure that they are supporting those Iowans that really need those mental health supports. So overall, it has been a very, very successful program for Iowa. I would also stress that as we move forward, we need to continue to support those small business activities in our recovery. And I'm very, very proud to say that as Iowans, we are going to pull through this. I would just encourage everyone just to always remember we do have folks out there that do need folks checking in on them. So whether they have mental health concerns or they're an elderly neighbor, we just need folks to remember. Please reach out to them, check in on them during this really tough time. But overall, we're going to get through this, folks. We just need to stay safe and stay strong. Thank you.
Over the last 6 weeks, I've had the opportunity to connect to roughly 22,000 Hoosiers. And this, of course, is an anxious time. This is a time when people want their public officials to be accessible. And we've listened. We've done a lot of listening, a lot of information sharing. The thing I've most consistently heard from people is that the Paycheck Protection Program was the right program at the right time. And I know we'll have important conversations in coming days and weeks about our next steps here in Washington. But we know in the state of Indiana, this program has worked. In fact, to date, Hoosiers have roughly received $10 billion in Paycheck Protection Program loans. That will, of course, enormously benefit and is enormously benefiting rank and file Hoosier workers and their employers, and disproportionately small employers. So I thought I'd give you a sampling of some of these businesses to add some color to it. Troyer Products is a manufacturing enterprise located in Elkhart. They were able to keep 21 employees on their team on account of this Paycheck Protection Program. Families First, an Indianapolis-based not-for-profit that provides mental health counseling and other services to at-risk individuals, they received a PPP loan. A medical device distributor in Valparaiso saw sales fall 90% when elective procedures were put on hold. So PPP helped them keep all 23 employees attached to the workforce on their team. A financial services firm in Indianapolis with 80 employees went forward with their plans to hire 8 college graduates, thanks to assurance they had with PPP. Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Seymour received a PPP loan that enabled them to keep their church staff and also to ensure that their important child care staff was also attended to and taken care of. And lastly, a business in Noblesville that employs 8 people changed hands on February 15th. So that was the cutoff date, you'll recall, for the PPP program. They were denied a PPP loan. They got in touch with our office. We in turn worked with the Small Business Administration, and we're able to help them resolve this issue and ensure that their employees got paid and were made whole. So the bottom line is this program has worked. I'm proud of my colleagues on the Small Business Committee that have worked with me and others to develop this program. I'm proud we got it done expeditiously and all the while took care of our frontline healthcare workers. So we will continue to be responsive to the needs of Hoosiers and all Americans, and very thoughtful as we consider potentially spending more resources here until we get to the other side of this virus.
Nancy?
Based on the information you've seen so far, where did the novel coronavirus originate?
Based on conditions I've seen so far, what?
Based on the information you've seen so far, the evidence, where did the novel virus originate? Was it in a lab, out in the wild?
I don't think we know, except we know it was in China, and I think the lack of Chinese transparency is the real story here. That it clearly exacerbated the problem and made its distribution around the world dramatically more likely.
But the president says there's tremendous evidence that it originated in a Chinese lab. Have you seen
What
that?
we know is it originated in China, and we know that their lack of transparency certainly contributed to its spreading around the world in warp speed. And the Chinese system clearly failed by not warning the rest of the world what was happening.
Leader McConnell, there's a question. The president has said that he sees the payroll tax cut as a red line for him in the next round of negotiations. Do you see it that way as well?
Well, we've had a lot of discussions about various suggestions from the administration, from the Democrats. I think I can safely say for our team here, the Republican Senate majority, if there's any red line, it's on litigation. The litigation epidemic has already begun. As of the end of last week, one report had it that 771 lawsuits had already been filed. This is going to impact our ability to begin to get back to work. And so we are working on a narrowly crafted liability protection to target healthcare workers and others who've been on the front lines here with something brand new that people were unclear of how to deal with. It will not protect somebody from gross negligence, but narrowly crafted to keep us from having an epidemic of lawsuits, which has already begun, which will dramatically slow our efforts to get back to normal. And look, we know we have to get the economy up and running here at some point, and those baby steps are being taken in various states around the country already.
Mr. Leader, what should Congress do, assuming the Paycheck Protection money runs out? You've urged taking a bit of a pause. Does that mean that you're willing to see there be no money in the PPP for some period of time while you consider this next bill?
Well, I think what I can safely say is we're monitoring the developments on a daily basis on all fronts. For those who've been anxious to do additional state and local, as I mentioned, Treasury guidance has already provided some more flexibility for the money we've already sent out to state governments. Senator Crapo was reminding us at lunch that the Fed is setting up a new facility related to state and local government. So we've got a brand new program here. As Senator Thune pointed out, we've spent roughly $2.8 trillion. We want to measure its effectiveness on virtually a daily basis as we move forward. I'm not ruling in or ruling out anything except to say that if there is another bill that passes in the Senate, it will include the liability protections.
Mr. Leader? Mr. Leader, the House leadership is indicating that they're going to move forward with their own bill as soon as next week. The Speaker is talking about state and local funding in the $1 trillion range. I want to get your reaction to that figure for state and local governments. And would you rule out the Senate taking up another bill of the size of the CARES Act of $2 trillion or more, or is that not going to be possible?
You all know I'm pretty good at staying on message. We're going to look at this on a daily basis and react to the needs that seem to be met, and look at mistakes we may have made in the previous legislation and think about correcting them. I don't think there's any particular sentiment among Senate Republicans for a vast new rescue package for state and local before we even figure out exactly how the previous money we've allocated for state and locals are. So look, the way you pass a law is the bill has to pass the House, has to pass the Senate, and be signed by the President. The Senate Republican majority and the President of the United States are not irrelevant in the process. So we're going to keep talking to each other and decide to act when and if it's appropriate to act again.
Which mistakes need to be corrected? You said mistakes from the previous bills need to be corrected. Which mistakes need to be corrected?
I'm sorry?
You said that mistakes from the previous bills should be corrected first. Which mistakes were you referring to?
Look, I think every day we're looking at adjustments. The Treasury's trying to make adjustments on their own. Some, may require legislative activity. We've heard from a lot of the governors who would like to have more flexibility to use the money we've already sent them. We're taking a look at that. So I'm not going to make any big predictions about what happens here in the future. We may act again. And if we do, it'll be because we're taking a measured response first to what we've already done, and then we'll see whether we need to do a lot more. Thanks a lot.
Good. 6 feet.
Yep, go ahead.
Were you happy with his answer on PCP where he didn't?